Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. The patch notes for patch 13.3 have been posted, which means it's time for me to talk through the top 5 changes of this week's patch. I'll let you guys know what you've been looking forward to in the coming weeks, and what the most exciting or impactful changes of this patch are. Now, 13.3 is interesting for a couple of different reasons. First, you'll notice there was no 13.2. That is because in the light of the recent cyber attack on Riot's headquarters, they were not able to actually publish 13.2. Instead, they hotfixed most of the changes from 13.2 out in 13.1b, and all of the remaining content was packaged into 13.3, so if you're looking for 13.2, they don't exist. Secondly, this is going to be a day late. Ordinarily, I would say this would come out tomorrow, but because, again, of that cyber attack, Riot are pushing the patch back by a day to make sure that everything launches with no problems. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk through 13.3, because there are a lot of really interesting changes that I wanted to talk you guys through today. The first of these are the changes to tenacity. Now, back in the day, there used to be one source of tenacity through systemic things, runes, masteries, and items, and that was Mercury Shreds. That was the only thing you could get outside of your champion's base kit that could give you tenacity. Over the years, Riot have added a lot more sources of tenacity to the point that now it's very easy for fighters and tanks to ignore large portions of enemy crowd control, provided they've built appropriately. As a result, Riot are basically nerfing tenacity. They do say in the little tooltip here that they are just trying to clean up an old system, but fundamentally they are nerfing tenacity because of how they are changing it. Everything in separate groups stacks additively with each other, but everything in the same group stacks multiplicatively with each other. Now, I'm not going to go through the math on this, but suffice to say multiplicatively is much worse than additively. As a result, you'll notice there are very few things that you can access via the item system or runes that are going to stack additively with each other. They are all going to be multiplicative as opposed to before, where some of them did stack additively and some of them did not. As a result, tenacity overall is much weaker, which is a net nerf to fighters and tanks who build the most tenacity. You can see a scenario in which a frontline tank has an Iceborne Gauntlet. They've built Legend Tenacity and Unflinching, and they also happen to have another source of tenacity like Mercury Shreds in their build at the same time. That is significantly weaker on the new patch than it is currently on live. As a result, fighters and tanks are taking yet another nerf following their previous nerfs on the last patch. Very disappointing to see, but definitely something to keep in mind. You can't get as much value out of tenacity by stacking it as you did previously. Moving on to the items, I wanted to talk through the change to Radiant Virtue, which is the black sheep of the tank mythic family. It never really caught on amongst a lot of players amongst the new tank mythics, most notably Jack-Show, the Protean, and Heartsteel. But that doesn't mean Radiant Virtue was weak. In fact, it was very commonly built on tanks in professional play who, because the pros understood the selfless nature of the item, they knew that they were building to help the team win, not necessarily to have their own champion power fantasies or power spikes in their games. As a result, Riot aren't trying to buff Radiant Virtue necessarily, but they're trying to make it feel more satisfying, so hopefully it catches on better in solo queue. To wit, its maximum health percentage has been increased, and the healing has been normalized, making this a better rush item, and much worse the later in the game you get it, and much worse the later the game actually goes. It also no longer grants basic ability haste when the effect is active, meaning that you're not building this for the ability haste, you're building this for the AoE healing and the healing on yourself. Generally, I think this should make it feel a lot better to build, but definitely it means that it's not going to be as strong in the hands of pros as it used to. The number 3 change in this week's patch are the changes to Annie. Now, this isn't quite a mid-scope update, but it's about as close as you can get to a mid-scope update without calling it a mid-scope update. These are a bunch of quality-of-life changes aimed at not necessarily buffing Annie's burst damage, but trying to make other aspects of her kit feel a lot more satisfying to use. As a result, her stun is now immediately primed when she spawns into the game and when she respawns, meaning that it's easier for her to make teleport plays or to be involved in a level 1 all-in that doesn't require her to take W and waste a lot of mana charging the stun on the way out to the river. E now has a different way it functions. It triggers off of both auto attacks and ability hits on a shielded target, which is quite nice for the damage reflection, and the damage has been increased, but it's also only triggers once per instance, meaning that you're not going to be able to really rein in damage on an opponent who's auto attacking you very rapidly while Molten Shield is available. And Tibbers has actually gotten some really crazy buffs here. He now scales with AP. He gets more health and more resist with Annie's own ability power, and he gets faster, literally movement speed goes up with rank in the ability, meaning that Tibbers will be harder to run away from, and it'll be a lot harder to actually kill. This should make Tibbers feel a lot more like a brick wall, as opposed to the sort of, yeah, you're here for the AoE magic damage and stun, and then Tibbers is there as well. Tibbers should feel a lot more like a threat in his own right, which should make Annie feel just generally better to play. I'm quite excited about this. Moving on to the number 2 changes here, we have the changes to tank supports. Now, Freak actually made a really cool and long video talking through his rationale behind the changes. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will have the video linked in the description. If you're a big fan of the sort of very dry, systemic conversations about League of Legends, Freak is a very good candidate for that. I enjoy his videos, but also I get excited about numbers changes, so, you know, your mileage may vary, suffice to say. But generally speaking, tank supports haven't been as effective as they were prior to the durability update, and the general gist is that they require more all-ins to kill their beefier enchanter lane bullies, while those enchanters don't have to do that much more damage to keep the tank supports from ever being able to find an all-in. As a result, tank supports on this patch are receiving a variety of different changes, buffing them up in various different ways, either by giving them more mana to actually launch all-ins and be able to fish for all-ins with, or by buffing up a little bit of their damage to make their all-ins more lethal, or by buffing up some of their abilities to make them a little bit more durable in lane and make them more able to resist the harass that's being thrown at them by these enchanter supports. I think that Alistar and Nautilus are the two biggest winners of these changes. I think these are going to be the champions to watch, and if you want to experience the new tank changes live, definitely these are one of the 2 champions to play in your own games. But there are a variety of different champions, Pyke included actually as well, even though he's not a tank, who receive the benefits of these changes, so definitely tank supports are going to be feeling a lot better to play on this new patch. Finally, the number 1 change is, of course, the Aurelion Sol CGU. Now, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to League of Legends in the last several months, Aurelion Sol's entire kit has been reworked and replaced with a brand new kit that re-envisions him as a champion. Gone are the days of trying to whack champions with your passive stars. Now Aurelion Sol is a hyperscaling backline mage. He has some of his existing abilities back in slight tweaks. His W is basically his old E, for example, but a lot of what Aurelion Sol is going to be doing is applying massive amounts of area of effect damage, breathing Starfire onto enemies, and eventually dropping the skies on top of them in the middle of a team fight to do massive AoE damage. He's going to scale very well, but he's also going to be a lot weaker in lane, making him a lot harder to pilot overall, but definitely will make him a little bit more attractive for newer players and people who just wanted to play Aurelion Sol in the first place to actually pick up. And that's going to be it for me today, guys. Those are the top 5 changes of patch 13.3. Let me know what your highlights are down in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to Aurelion Sol, but let me know what you're excited for in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.